She stood before Congress, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth. But what followed was 3 hours of dodging, deflecting, and outright denial. Kristi Noem, once trusted to uphold the Constitution, now accused of violating it in plain sight. From hiding U.S. residents in foreign prisons to deporting sick American children, the allegations were jaw-dropping, and all of it came crashing down in one brutal mic-drop moment. Congressman Bennie Thompson didn't just call her out, he exposed what some are calling one of the most disturbing abuses of power in recent memory. And that was only the beginning. It started like any other hearing, formal, serious, and bound by oath. Kristi.
Gentleman yields. I think we've covered everyone. Mr. Ranking Member, you're recognized for a closing statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. And I'd like to associate myself with Mr. Garcia's statement. I can't believe that we would send somebody or anyone from our country somewhere else and say, well, we cut off all communication. We're a better country than that. And I just thank Mr. Garcia for raising that question. Secretary Noem, at the start of this hearing, you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, the whole truth and nothing but the truth, so help you God. Then you sat down and dodged the truth over and over and over for a little more than 3 hours, so help you God. You repeatedly testified that you and the Department of Homeland Security will follow the Constitution, the laws, and the order of the Supreme Court. Well, the Fifth Amendment of the United States Constitution says that no person shall be deprived of life, liberty, or property without due process of law. And yet, a federal court found that the Department of Homeland Security, under your watch, believes that it has a right to stash away residents of this country in foreign prisons without the semblance of due process. So you did not tell the truth to this committee today when you said you would follow the Constitution and comply with due process. You also testified that you follow orders of the Supreme Court of the United States and all courts. But the Supreme Court unanimously directed the government to facilitate the return of Kilmar Garcia to the United States. But you just testified before this committee that Kilmar Garcia will never return to the United States. So you didn't tell the truth to this committee again when you said that you comply with court orders and decisions. You've overseen the deportation of U.S. citizen children and have claimed that their parents chose to take their children with them. But you produced no evidence that the mother, let alone both parents, of those children freely gave consent to have their children deported from the United States. In fact, everyone involved in those cases say that the mothers, in fact, did not want their children, especially their sick American children, deported. In fact, your agency lured families to ICE appointments under false pretenses, lied to them, refused to let them speak with an attorney or children's father, and deported them before a court had time to even hear the case. You've given yourself the unilateral right to deport anyone you deem a threat. You refuse to comply with court orders that try to stop you. That puts all of us at risk. Beyond your false testimony about the administration's deportation policies, you falsely stated that the administration is focused on a full range of DHS's missions. Instead, your budget request appears to reflect a view that DHS's sole purpose is to be a border wall construction agency that deports U.S. citizen children with cancer. Your budget proposed cuts to cybersecurity, emergency preparedness, and aviation security. Even before asking Congress for these budget cuts, You've overseen mass reductions in the workforce at CISA and FEMA. Despite repeated requests from this committee on how many people have been fired or have been bullied into quitting before their tenure, DHS has refused to share that information. So it should worry every American that we do not know how many people are left at FEMA to respond to disasters and how many cyber defenders still work at CISA as China and other adversaries attack our systems every day. And you made clear in response to my questioning, you have no plan, written plans for FEMA. It is very apparent that also is no plan for CISA, where you are trying to gut the agency's funding and falsely claiming that CISA is a censorship agency. Since CISA never censored anyone, but now we are all paying the price for you buying into a baseless conspiracy theory. Secretary Noem, I'm glad that you finally came to testify before this committee, but I'm disappointed, along with a lot of my Democratic colleagues, that you stood here and took an oath to tell the truth, then repeatedly failed to do so to this committee. Let me just say, if you dance with the devil long enough, he's liable to follow you home. I hope that you will stop dancing around the truth and start telling the truth so this committee can do its work, helping to defend DHS from the attacks you've launched against it. Mr. Chair,
Noem walked in, raised her right hand, and swore to tell the truth, the whole truth,
a little more
and nothing
than
but
3
the
hours.
truth. But the moment she sat down,
So help
that
you God.
promise began to unravel.
You
For
repeatedly
over 3 hours,
testified
she
that
dodged
you and the
direct
Department of
questions,
Homeland
twisted
Security
facts, and avoided
will follow the
responsibility at every
Constitution, the
turn.
laws,
Congressman Bennie
and
Thompson
the
didn't
order
let it
of the
slide. He
Supreme
called it
Court.
what it was, betrayal.
Well,
If you
the
dance
Fifth
with the devil
Amendment
long
of the
enough, he's liable to
United
follow
States
you home, he
Constitution
warned. And with that,
says that
he
no
exposed what
person
many had already
shall
begun
be
to suspect,
deprived
that
of
Noem
life,
wasn't just withholding the
liberty,
truth, she
or
was actively
property
working
without
against it,
due process
under oath and on the
law.
record. One of the most
And
damning
yet,
revelations
a federal
came when
court
Thompson pointed to a
found
chilling
that the
court
Department
ruling
of
under
Homeland
Kristi Noem's
Security,
leadership.
under
DHS
your
had detained
watch,
U.S. residents in
believes
foreign
that
prisons
it
with
is-
zero due
it
process.
has a right
That's not speculation.
stash
Federal
away
court confirmed it.
residents
The
of
Fifth
this
Amendment
country
clearly states that
in
no
foreign
person shall be
prisons
deprived of life,
without the
liberty,
semblance
or
of
property
due
without due
process.
process of law. Yet
So you did not
DHS,
tell
the very
the truth
agency
to
meant to
this
protect
committee
Americans,
today
allegedly
when you
skipped that
said
basic right entirely.
you would follow
Legal
the
residents,
Constitution
stripped of their freedom, locked away
and comply
overseas,
with due
without
process.
charges, lawyers,
You
or
also
even a hearing.
testified
It wasn't just a
that you
policy
follow
failure,
orders
that was a
of the
constitutional
Supreme Court
violation. And
of
when
the
pressed,
United
Noem
States
didn't deny it.
and
She
all
just moved on,
courts.
as if
But the
violating civil
Supreme
rights
Court
was business as usual,
unanimously
if ignoring due
directed
process wasn't
the
enough.
government to
Kristi Noem's
facilitate the
DHS took it a step
return
further by
of
openly
Kilmar
defying the
Garcia
Supreme Court.
to the
The
United
case centered
States.
around Killer Garcia,
But you
a
just
person the
testified
court
before
unanimously
this
ordered to be
committee
brought back to the
that
United
Kilmar
States.
Garcia
Not only did
would
Noem's
never
department refuse to
return
comply,
to the
she
United
boldly
States.
told Congress that
So
Garcia
you
would
didn't
never
tell the
return.
truth
Think
to
about
this
that TAN
committee
agency
again
head, under oath,
when you said
admitting she
that you
won't follow a
complied
direct order from the
with court
highest court in the
orders
country.
and
That's not
decisions.
just political arrogance, it's a
You've
constitutional
overseen the
crisis. When a federal agency decides it's above the law, democracy
US
itself is at
citizen
risk,
children
and as Thompson made clear,
and have
this
claimed
wasn't an
that their
accident.
parents
It was a deliberate choice to
chose to
ignore the
take
rule
their
of law,
children
just
with
when it
them.
seemed things couldn't get worse.
But
The
you
hearing took a
produced no
heartbreaking turn.
evidence
Under Noem's direction,
that the mother,
DHS
let
allegedly
alone
deported
both
U.S. citizen
parents
children, some of
of
them
those
sick,
children
even battling
freely
cancer
gave
without proper
consent
consent from their parents.
have their
Congressman
children
Thompson
deported
revealed that
from the
DHS
United
lured
States.
families to ICE appointments
In
under
fact,
false
everyone
pretenses,
involved in
blocked
those
them from legal
cases
counsel, and
say that
deported
the
them before
mothers,
judges
in
could even
fact,
hear their
did not
cases.
want their
No paperwork
children,
proving parental
especially
consent, no
their
time for
sick
legal
American
review,
children
just families
deported.
torn apart in the dark.
In fact,
Mothers have come
your
forward
agency
saying they never
lured
agreed to send their
families
children away.
to
And
ICE
while Noem
appointments
claimed
under
otherwise,
false
she
pretenses,
provided no proof
lied
to
to
back it
them,
up.
refused
These
to
weren't
let
policy
them speak
missteps, they were human
with an
rights
attorney
violations
or
disguised as
children's
enforcement.
father,
While the
and
headlines focused on
deported them
deportations, something more
before
quietly
a court
dangerous
had
was happening
time to
behind the
even hear the
scenes.
case.
Kristi Noem wasn't just
You've given
steering
yourself
DHS in a
the unilateral
controversial
right
direction. She was
to
stripping
deport
it down from
anyone
within.
you
Her
deem a
proposed
threat.
budget slashed funding
You
for
refuse to
cybersecurity,
comply with
emergency
court
preparedness,
orders
and
that
aviation
try to
security
stop you.
core areas meant to keep
That puts
Americans
all
safe.
of us
Agencies like
at
FEMA
risk.
and CISA saw massive
Beyond
staff
your false
reductions. But when
testimony
Congress asked
about
how
the
many had been fired or
administration's
pushed out,
deportation
DHS
policies,
refused to answer.
you falsely
Noem even admitted
staged-
she had no written plans for
stated
FEMA. leaving the
that the
country exposed
administration
during
is
natural
focused
disasters at
on
a
a
time
full
when
range
foreign
of
cyber attacks are
DHS
rising.
missions.
She's weakening the very
Instead,
departments meant to stop
your
them.
budget
It wasn't
request
mismanagement,
appears
it
to
was a
reflect
quiet
a
dismantling
view
of national
that
defense as
DHS's
DHS
sole
crumbled from the
purpose
inside. One
is to
mission
be a
stayed
border
fully
wall
funded, building the border
construction
wall.
agency
Noem's budget
that
made it clear
deports
everything
US
else could be
citizen
cut but the
children
wall
with
remained
cancer.
untouchable. Critics
Your
say she's
budget
turned
proposed
DHS into a
cuts to
single-purpose machine,
cybersecurity,
focused solely on
emergency
deportation and
preparedness,
border
and
optics,
aviation
while ignoring
security.
every other threat.
Even before asking
Cybersecurity /
Congress
disaster
for these
response,
budget
gutted,
cuts,
but wall construction,
you've
full steam ahead.
overseen
Congressman
mass
Thompson called it out.
reductions
This wasn't
in the
national security, it
workforce
was
at
political
CISA
theater.
and
And while
FEMA.
real threats grow at home and
Despite
abroad,
repeated
Noem is
requests
using
from
DHS
this
like a
committee
campaign tool,
on how
not
many
a safety
people have been
agency.
fired
It's not just
or
about
have
what's
been
being built
bullied
at the border rights,
into
about what's
quitting
being torn down
before their
everywhere else.
tenure,
And the consequences
DHS
could be
has
catastrophic.
refused to
After
share
hours
that
of deflections,
information.
contradictions, and
So it should
denials,
worry
Congressman Bennie
every
Thompson
American
delivered the final
that
blow.
we do
His
not
voice steady,
know how
his
many
words sharp.
people
He
are
looked
left
Noem
at
in the eye
FEMA
and said,
to
"You did not tell the
respond
truth
to
to this committee
disasters,
today."
and how
Then came
many
the line
cyber
that echoed beyond the hearing
still
room.
work
If you
at
dance with the
CISA
devil long
as
enough,
China
he's liable
and
to
other
follow you home.
adversaries
It wasn't just a rebuke,
attack
it
our
was a reckoning.
systems every
Thompson
day.
exposed the full picture.
And you made
a
clear
DHS
in
under Noem that
response to my
violates due
questioning,
process,
you
defies
have
the
no
Supreme
plan,
Court, deports
written
sick
plan
American
for
children,
FEMA.
and guts the country's
It is
defenses all
very
while hiding behind
apparent
political slogans.
that
This wasn't a
also
partisan
is
clash.
no plan
It was
for
accountability,
CISA,
raw
where
and
you are
direct,
trying
and
to
it left
gut
no
the
room for
agency's
spin. That
funding
this hearing wasn't
and
just a
falsely
political
claiming
spectacle,
that
it was a
CISA
warning. When a top
is a
official swears
censorship
to uphold the
agency.
Constitution and then openly
Since
violates it,
CISA
the
never
damage isn't just
censored
legal, it's deeply
anyone.
moral. Kristi
But
Noem's
now
actions
we are
exposed
all
a
paying
disturbing
the
truth,
price
that power, when
for you
unchecked,
buying
can
into
turn
a
protective
baseless
institutions into
conspiracy
tools of
theory.
harm. From tearing
Secretary
apart
Noem,
families to ignoring
I'm
Supreme
glad
Court
that you
orders
finally
to
came
dismantling
to
national
testify
safety nets.
before
The
this
pattern is
committee.
clear. This wasn't
But I'm
incompetence,
disappointed,
it was intent.
along
If
with
DHS,
a lot
the
of my
agency meant to
Democratic
defend us,
colleagues,
becomes a vehicle
that
for
you
abuse
stood
and
here and took
deception,
an oath
then no one is
to
safe
tell
from
the truth.
politicized power.
Then
And if leaders
repeated
aren't held
they
accountable
failed
now,
to do
what
so
happens next
to
could be
this
worse.
committee.
So if you
Let me
believe in
just
truth,
say, if you
justice,
dance with the
and real
devil
oversight,
long
don't
enough,
just watch. Pay
he's
attention,
liable to
stay
follow you
loud,
home.
and subscribe.
I hope that